Okay, so this panel is about what do we do next? Where do we go from here? How do we take this collective message, this collective conversation that we've all built, we've all been working on for a long time in all of our communities? How do we build this into a global message? And how does it apply in some of the communities that aren't represented here as well? So this is the final plenary, and we're really grateful that all these people are here. We're going to explore some questions on how does this message get included in Habitat 3, where many of us will be at, and then how do we help implement the New Urban Agenda? How do we include placemaking ideas, public space ideas in supporting the implementation of the new agenda, the New Urban Agenda, going forward? So we're just going to go in order. Is that okay? It doesn't matter. You can do it any of them. Okay. So we're going to start off with Elisa, who we first met when she was an Eisenhower Fellow. She came to visit us in New York, and I was with her in Jakarta recently, where she's been doing some amazing placemaking work at the center of the city with UNESCO, and now works with the Rujak Center. It's a leading advocacy research organization on urban issues in Indonesia.
Okay. Hi, good afternoon, everyone. So I'm a little bit nervous here, so please bear with me for the next 5 minutes. So I'm Elisa, I'm from Jakarta. Along the conference, I find a little bit hard to relate with the conference. There are two different conferences, because I come from Indonesia, where we represent 40% of Southeast Asia population and also 3% of world population. So we, in Metro Jakarta, you see the red dot there. It's consists of 30 million people, so it's really huge and dense. So it's totally different from here. So, and then 70% of Indonesian, we working in informal issues, informal sector. Consensus is very easy to build over there. And of course, over the conference, you heard about bike lane, about innovation district, digital placemaking, aging community, the law, I don't know about issue like public-private partnership, but in our case, we have many bad experience with public-private partnership. For us, public-private partnership is like early state of privatization, and we are such a young country. We have a rise of middle class. So we also struggling with the basic infrastructure and, of course, housing rights. So now you can see the difference between we, Global South, except Australia, with you, most of you are come from Global North. So how about the New Urban Agenda itself? So basically, we already criticized it since a year ago when we first received the first draft of the New Urban Agenda. So for us, the agenda itself is failed to only see the human settlement and urbanization as a tool to achieve the development goals. And they only see the habitat as a tool to achieve economic development. And for us, it's more into like a top-down approach. And because of this top-down approach, it's impossible to renew and plan our own cities because it's not based from the local culture and also local needs. And then we also have find it a little bit difficult in the draft because the draft itself doesn't address cultural identity crisis that happen in cities in Indonesia, especially and of course in Southeast Asia. And then we see that local culture is only acknowledged in the agenda itself as a harmonious tool to develop urban economy. So basically it's about economic and development. So I would like to give you an example why I criticize that, why we criticize that. This is an example of, you can say, a placemaking activities that we done 1.5 years ago. Actually, this is a settlement along the riverbank area in the north city, in the old city of Jakarta. And so if you see that this is a collaboration between University of Indonesia, between us, Urban Pearl Consortium, and also with Architects Sans Frontier. So this is about how we reclaiming place, we create identity for the communities, and also we make them proud of themselves. So this is the picture from 1.5 years ago before we start. So as you can see, they are under threat, constant threat, because the government want to evict them, and they live along the riverbank. And behind that is a 17th century old city wall, which is built by the Dutch during the Dutch era, during the VOC era. And we call this community, typical community is a kampung, a vernacular settlement. It's a tight-knit community. They usually use a street as their living room, and they usually, they have all this ice on the street because they always sit in the front, and all the children playing along the street, and they try to use as many space as possible, so that's why it looks like that. So a part of the sanitation and problem and also infrastructure problem. Basically, they are a very strong community, and they already lived there for 50 years. So what we did is typical participatory planning, of course, and then we facilitate them as an architect, and we help them with the technical, if they find a technical problem. So unlike typical placemaking, we are not starting with the small thing. We are starting with the big thing, which is house. Of course, it's expensive than it used to be, but the house was built by their own money. They're using the revolving fund. And because of the cost of construction, of course, expensive, so they have to do it by themselves. Even they have to dry their own bamboo. This house is using bamboo construction, and they paint everything by themselves. So this is the result. They're willing to cut most of the houses to allow government to build inspection road. So the fire truck can pass along the riverbank if there's an emergency happen. So after they finalize the house, they managed to do another thing. So they continue to do the revolving funds regarding the heritage. That's the old city wall, and they're also guarding the river. They make an inspection every week to clean all the garbage, and the improvement continue. So this is, I heard before this, how building can help placemaking. So this is one of the example how you renovate, you build one building, and the progress is continue from that. So in conclusion, after we finalize most of the works, and this year we open this kampung, this settlement for public to come. So this is UNESCO event, the green one. The yellow event is from Indonesia Architect Association. So a lot of people come to kampung, experience, feel the experience there. They also try the raft. There's a bamboo rafting that goes around the way. And of course, we want to use this opportunity by reclaiming the place, make them dignified with themselves. We want to reclaim our rights of the city as well. Okay, thank you.
So next up, we have Ming Zhang from the World Bank. And we've been really inspired by their work on public spaces, public space-led development, and we enjoyed organizing a couple different events with them recently through their Urbanscape Symposium that they see as silo busting. You have a different word for it that I wanted. Knowledge silo breaking within the World Bank, using public space as a knowledge silo breaker, which is a really powerful idea. So they're looking at culture change, but also how to advance a public space agenda within the World Bank, and obviously how that impacts global development, place-led development in the world. So thanks. Here's this. If you want to.
All right. Good. Thanks a lot, Ethan, and thanks a lot, Fred, for inviting the World Bank here. 3 colleagues of us here to take advantage of this wonderful gathering. Public space is not a vocabulary traditionally in the World Bank. When a group of urban planners, social development specialists and transport specialists got together in the World Bank, tried to break silos and try to see how we can improve public space in many cities that we're working in. We looked around, and the first people we invited to the World Bank to talk about public space is PPS. So thank you for coming to the bank, actually, and that really helped initiated, to some extent, a small movement within the World Bank to highlight the importance of public space and how we can work together with the cities to improve the space. So I'll just give a little bit of highlights, and I just want to, using this opportunity to bring more people to the cities that we are working in. Okay, so just very quickly, I think, Bruce Katz, and yesterday already he mentioned the rapid urbanization that's taking place in the world, especially in Asia Pacific and in Africa. How they urbanize will really have a huge and long-lasting impact. When we look at South Asia, for example, India, Pakistan, Bangladesh, Sri Lanka, Nepal, Afghanistan, these countries, urbanization itself is happening very fast at almost like 2.5% per year in terms of population. But if you look at the footprint, the urban built-up land expansion, it's double the speed. So population increase at 2.5% per year. Land area is actually increasing by 5% per year. So if that trend continues, within 15 years, you will have the urban space, urban built-up area doubled in only 15 years. So how this happens and how this urbanization happens really have long impact. I think that's where really the actions are, and how you build the cities will at this time will have a long-lasting impact. Now, the other thing I want to highlight is in most of the countries that we work with, especially in South Asia, in Africa, the infrastructure service level are very low. So there is basic needs that need to be satisfied: traffic, water, sewage, garbage, air pollution, flooding, etc. All these things. In many of the cities, for example, where I'm working in India, in Pakistan, water supply is still a big problem. Many households, majority of the households are only getting water supply 2-3 hours a day. So these are the basic services. You have sewage, garbage collection, all these issues. But then lack of public space and extreme crowding is another big issue that we didn't highlight as equally important to people as the other services. And I think that's starting to change. A few years ago, when we tried to do something in some of the countries in improving public space, there are a lot of questions within the World Bank and from other development partners. Why do you provide funding for the city beautification projects? What's the need while there are a lot of poor people? Now, I think through the wonderful work, actually, we are looking at for many colleagues in the PPS and other agencies, we look at how important this public space as actually a basic needs, essential needs for the population, and especially for the poor. So that's the kind of thing that we're starting to look at. So this is the main work that we are supporting a lot of cities around the world in developing countries on infrastructure, service level improvement. Now we're looking at the public space. So now just continue on this centrality of this public space and the placemaking. I think this is essential needs because people use streets, use markets, parks, community centers, even sports facilities. And it's the poor, actually, who need more of this space because often in a lot of the segregated societies, the rich have access to excluded spaces, while the poor has much less, and they need this much more. Now, just want to highlight on the Habitat 3, leading to the Habitat 3, the new Sustainable Development Goals, explicitly. One has SDG, the goal number 11, explicitly highlight the importance of safe, resilient cities. And then within the target, it mentioned it's important within that, it explicitly mentioned providing universal access to safe, inclusive, accessible green public space. So for developing communities, it's very important that this importance of public space is recognized as the Sustainable Development Goals that's being approved by the United Nations Assembly. But what's important, it's not just the public space itself. As I mentioned, the cities with low infrastructure service levels, you're doing a lot of work in transport, drainage, neighborhoods upgrading. And it's these, traditionally we look at these transport is just for traffic. Drainage is just for letting water flow. But then if you really look at it from people's perspective, these are actually also public facilities that people can use as part of the public space. That's a triangle that we haven't traditionally used that much. I think there's a big scope on how to incorporate consideration of public space into these investments. And finally, I think it's really, really important to have a people and a community-centered approach to the public space. We did historically supported some of the facilities, public space, which turned out to be what you can call the white elephants. That monumental things which people don't really use. I think the lesson really important that's been talking a lot here is how to have a people and a community-centered approach to this. So the World Bank, we are investing in public space. Many of the investments we actually didn't recognize, but as I mentioned, in these infrastructure, urban upgrading, drainage projects, we are doing a lot. We look at in our the landing investment pipeline. We actually have hundreds of millions dollars investment in countries all around the world, which are related to public space in countries like Sri Lanka, in Bangladesh, in Pakistan. In Brazil, in Fortaleza, we are supporting a new project to restore a park which really provides access to low-income communities. Even in countries like Afghanistan, in Kabul, we are working on this improving public space. And a lot of the improvements are in the projects, for example, for crime and violence prevention, in the projects for livelihood restoration, in the projects for cultural heritage restoration, in transport projects, in transit-oriented development projects. These are the things where a lot of the public space elements are actually introduced. So really, with this, we look forward to partner with the PPS, with everybody here. The placemaking, I think it's a movement, and we want to work with you to introduce the movement to the cities around the world that we are working in. And also, we want to work with you to look at the expertise to address some of the unique challenges that our cities are facing. There's a rapid growth. Growth is very fast. It's very crowded urban space, how to work with that. Service level is very low. There's a huge informality. Governance structure is very fragile. So how to work on these challenges, we would like to continue to work with you. So that's the situation. Now, you from the left side, it's a city that we are working in Kandy Sri Lanka, in a beautiful city. There's not a space. This is a railway track as people use to pass because there's just not enough space. They're squeezed to walk on the railway track. In the future, we would like to have great public space that people can use. Okay, I'll just stop here. Actually, I have one last thing, just how to contact us. You can contact me, you can contact Jalkh, who's sitting over there. We look really forward to working with everybody here. Thank you.
So how's that, Dina? You were asking to have a banker on you know, so we have to get all bankers now to do public space, place-led development. So Jose, Chong from UN Habitat, we're really excited to introduce from the Public Spaces program there that we've been collaborating with for several years now, that helped launch the Future of Places program with us, and has created toolkits, has really introduced public space to the Sustainable Development Goals, 11.7, as Ming mentioned, and now getting it into the New Urban Agenda language, and we're excited to be partnering with them in Habitat 3 as well. So thank you, Jose.
No, thanks a lot, Tang, and thanks a lot, PPS, for the invitation. I wanted to say something that maybe there is no mention, I think, in the conference, is that thanks to Vancouver, actually, the Habitat 1 was in Vancouver 40 years ago. And thanks to this city, it's like now that we have UN Habitat. The main result of Habitat 1 was the creation of UN Habitat. This is a professional reason why we thank Vancouver now to host this event. The second reason that I'm very glad to be here is like I will manage to see some relatives that migrated from Peru 40 years ago. So this is another thing that is very nice to be in this city and to participate in this forum. I want to talk a little bit about our global public space program and then about a new urban agenda. We are quite new. It's like we are working in public space issues since 2011, and we focus in three things: knowledge management, advocacy, and tools. Ethan mentioned that we have the global toolkit on public space. You can see the links there to download the information, but also you can upload the tools that you already have, and you can subscribe as a partner of the public space program. The second thing is partnership and networking. It's like we're collaborating with PPS, but with serious organizations around the world. And technical cooperation, pilot projects, and capacity development. And I will explain two examples how we are working in the technical cooperation and pilot projects. There is some of the tools that we have, the Global Toolkit on Public Space. This is our process. We go from the inventory to need assessment, community dialogues, forums, citywide strategies, implementation, and monitoring. So it's like the normal process that we follow when we are focusing on public space. And this is a tool that we have developed recently, and we are using Nairobi as a case study, as a first attempt to do a quality assessment of public space. We are using open source technology that is a code toolbox. This is an ecosystem that mixes the surveys online with a computer, and then you can download an application. It was developed by Harvard Humanitarian Initiative with the support of USAID and with the support of UN OCHA and other institutions. And basically, it's an app. We are now sending to the people to Nairobi. We put a GPS point. We take 3 pictures. We record the noise of the space. We have a device to measure the decibels that we have in the public space, and we have a questionnaire that you can fill in 20 minutes. This is the structure of the questionnaire. It's like we are focusing in 2 levels. At the citywide level, the accessibility, quantity, distribution, and network of public space. And in the individual public space, we are focusing on accessibility, use, comfort, facilities, and green coverage. We managed in 6 months to get like 4,000 points of information, of 170 possible questions that we have in the survey. And now we are working with 1,800 points of information to do the analysis of what is happening with the system of public space in Nairobi and with the strategies how to develop new and to remediate the whole system. These are some examples. I will pass very fast, only like to see the math, sorry for that. But I have only 5 minutes. Then this is what is happening in normal participatory processes. This is a colleague in Haiti. And what happens sometimes is like we have the children, the women, and the elders that don't have a voice. So we are trying, it's like there is like many tools on that. And we have an innovative partnership with Minecraft. I don't know, all of you know about Minecraft. If you have kids that play Minecraft, it's like a percentage of some of the products that Minecraft sells go to the Global Public Space Program and actually implement projects in developing countries. So this is nice because it's like we are doing some implementation and using Minecraft as a tool for participatory design. So we have projects around the world. This is an example in Nepal. This is a case in Lima, in India, and Nepal. This is some of the projects that we have around the world. My colleague for the World Bank already mentioned the importance of the Sustainable Development Goals. That is something that we should stress. So this is, again, the Sustainable Development Goals. And this is important because the change is now is a global goal. So it's basically the Millennium Development Goals was focusing mainly in developing countries. This is focusing in the whole world. And also because it's that cities will need to report of how they are doing on public space. So only to reinforce this point, we are doing basing the assessment that I previously mentioned and ranking analysis to analyze how accessible, how safe, and how inclusive is your public space. So there is still only two indicators regarding the Sustainable Development Goals. One is the percentage of land allocated to public space, and the other is violence happening in public space. So this is a sort of proxy, but it's what we wanted to do is to develop a more comprehensive matrix to analyze the target. I entered rapidly to the new urban agenda, and this is important basically because for the first time in the history, it's we have more than 50% of the global population living in cities. So this is crucial. Basically, the next 20, this is the agenda that the country will focus in the next 20 years. You are welcome to Quito from the 16th to 20 October. And only to highlight a little bit the process, and it's we have an issue paper on public space, so it is an important part on the new urban agenda. And we had a process that started in 2014, with the preparatory conference, 1 in New York, the preparatory conference 2 in Nairobi, and the third one was in Surabaya. And then we have thematic conference and then regional conference. There was one that it was important that you can use as a reference document. The Barcelona Declaration was the thematic conference on public space, and they were highlighting these 4 points, and you can have it as a reference. But what I did is to highlight from the draft outcome document for the top of the new urban agenda from the 10th of September. There is public space is mentioned 10 times. And this is, for example, they are talking about participatory, promote civic engagement, gender equality, facilitates accessibility for people with disabilities, etc. I will go fast on this. Sorry for that, but it's we don't have time. You can check the new urban agenda online. And this is very important. What is going to happen? We have the Quito implementation plan, and you can go to this link, and you will see what are the voluntary commitments that the different organizations wanted to commit in time and money, to implement this new urban agenda. So you can go to this link, and it's totally voluntary. And also they are asking to merge different organizations to achieve a certain of the commitments. This is Quito. We are going to organize what is called the Habitat Village. So basically, the conference will go out to the city, and there is going to be a lot of interventions in the city. And we have a pop-up public space, so we can offer this space like to organize like a certain events and talks. The site events has closed like some months ago, but it's like if someone of you is going to Quito, it's like we can offer this space like to provide some space like to present your projects. And I wanted to finalize with this. This is a very important conference of placemaking, and it's like everyone here is advocating for placemaking. Our experience, this is a very important issue, but also when we are talking about place in developing countries, it's like we are talking about creation of public space. The world is urbanized, so we need to create enough public space. We are talking about recovering public space that is like sometimes are encroached, and also the defense of the public space that is fundamental when we are talking about public space and citywide issues. And I wanted to show another leader. This is Wangari Maathai. And basically, she's the first African woman who won the Nobel Prize. And she won the Nobel Prize to win, to protect and to defend a public space. Thanks a lot.
So I'll invite up Michael Mehaffy, who's, besides being the research chair for Future of Places and has led that effort, has been a long-time inspiration for us and really the sort of intellectual foundation for a lot of our thinking. He's collaborated with Christopher Alexander as a student of Jane
Nico
Jacobs.
Salingaros, our good friend.
Nico
Thank you, Ethan, for your kind comments. I'm going to be very brief. I just want to connect a little bit what we're talking about today to what we talked about yesterday. I was talking to Ethan, and I said that the only thing I slightly regret about yesterday is that it was sort of a downer to recognize the challenges that we have. And yet, right now in this historic moment, we have such an incredible opportunity with the entire global conversation focusing on public space and placemaking. And I think that is such we all need to recognize what a great historic moment, a historic opportunity that is, even as we understand the challenges that entails. And I think it's up to us really to connect the dots, to get out of the silos, to connect people who are doing different things, and to recognize and to share with others the environmental benefits of public space and placemaking, the social benefits, the economic benefits, and all the connections of those that are so important. And as Jose said, the implementation is going to be so important. You're all going to be, we will all be part of that and taking that forward in Quito and beyond. I just wanted to say, for those of you who are going to be in Quito, there are going to be a series of events, side events and networking events. If you'll look on, of course, the PPS website and the Project for Public Space, or the futureofplaces.com website, there'll be more information about that. And then we need to continue this work beyond Quito, as Jose was saying. We need to have a sort of polycentric network of folks who are working for our part at the Future of Places and at the Axon Johnson Foundation in particular. We're going to be creating a new research center, as I think most of you know, but that's only one node in the network, and we want to begin or exploring or continue exploring collaborations with all of you. And I think there's a couple of things we really need to do as part of that that center and that work. One of them is to really question the model of what good cities are and good urbanism is. We have a model today that's defective, that is all about, cities that aren't for people, cities that are for capital, or that are for technocracies, or for cars or other things. And we need to question, and we need to provide the evidence. We need to connect the dots, as I said before, between what we are actually doing on the ground and how that is actually rewarding people. And let's find new ways to reward people for great placemaking. Thank you.
Thank you, Michael. So excited to get to introduce Rony Jalkh, who's a senior fellow at PPS right now, and was at UN Habitat for a long time, working in Lebanon, and has been doing research with us on the role of placemaking in refugees and post-conflict communities, and getting case studies, but figuring out some basic principles to apply in these contexts.
Good afternoon. My name is Rony. I come from Lebanon. I would like to share with you some thought regarding placemaking, role of placemaking in unstable cities. So based on IOM, 60% of 14.4 million refugees and 80% of 3.8 million internally displaced persons live in urban areas. Most of the public spaces in these cities are a place for discrimination and tension. And this is not about Lebanon only in the Middle East, it's globally. It's in Europe with the displacement now that it's facing in America, in Asia, it's everywhere. So what can placemaking do? Placemaking for peacemaking. People need people. One needs the other, whoever the other is. Placemaking offers peacemaking a physical space to encourage the other to find a place where he or she feels welcome. The common denominator for placemaking and peacemaking is the place. Peacemaking efforts can only succeed if it is implemented in a physical place where people can connect. Both peacemaking and placemaking need a physical place for people to express their desire for well-being and for peace. So all is about people and place, connecting people to people and connecting people to place. Placemaking, it's based on a participatory approach. A participation can build trust, and the trust will lead to the peace, which is peacemaking. And peacemaking, which is based on the trust, can enhance the participation and can enhance the role of placemaking. Two questions could be raised. Are our public spaces in socially fragmented cities, are they safe, free, and accessible for everyone? Can placemaking be a strategy to promote peacemaking in cities and regions facing instability? Placemakers should figure out how to replace the L by an E. The new mission of placemaker is to become placemaker, peacemaker. Thank you.
Wow. So he's been an absolute inspiration to have in our office, and we're learning a lot in this context, and it applies in all different types of high conflict areas. What, you have comments there?
No, peacemaking. You know, when you put it in the computer, you try to put placemaking in, it becomes peacemaking.
Oh, right. Spell correct. So yeah, you might not need to. Okay.
That's me.
So to bring it all home and to finish off the day, we're really lucky to have my friend Thomas Ermacora here, who just flew in midday today and has to leave tonight. So we're really lucky to have him. Some new energy in the room. It's been a long day. And he's one of the global leaders in placemaking. He's started an organization, an NGO called Clear Village, which has done placemaking all over Europe and is working in North America now and Canada. And he started some maker spaces in London. He's a regeneration architect. And he's recently done this incredible book called Recoded City, which is really one of the most comprehensive possible books on the placemaking movement, profiling placemaking organizations around the world, a lot in the global south, and making some really bold ideas around how to build the placemaking movement going forward. So thank you, Thomas, for being here.
Thank you. Thank you, Ethan. I hope I'm not postponing the drinks for everyone here. I have a feeling that there's a lot of people who are waiting for a drink. So I'm going to try and be relatively brief. Thank you for the introduction, and thank you for having me here. What you're seeing there is what I think we as a group have to do. I've been walking around different places in the world and met with placemakers and some peacemakers. And I find that there's something that's missing in what we're doing, in the discourse that we're having. And I think the key word is how we use technology better, because we're moving too slowly, actually, to achieve the SDGs. And so I know many people here have talked about technology. I saw the program, and I know that the placemaking movement is increasingly dependent on data and also tools and technologies. But I think there's another thing that we are forgetting, and that's we are kind of a technology, and we need to tap into the collective brain that we have in the world. So I'm going to go through a little personal journey. Do I have the clicker, actually? Right here. Thank you. So I started kind of there, thinking about how cities could be green and for everyone more sustainable. And quickly, I realized that that was a bit of a mirage. It was promising green ghettos for the few. And that was certainly not a direction I wanted to go in. And then I started looking at other options, perhaps more biophilic design, where you could be at one with nature. So instead of having to build cities that were clunky things that we live in, they were espousing the contours of nature or being intertwined with it. And that's not my work. It's a friend in New York, Mitchell Joachim. And I just think it's fantastic, but we're not there yet. And this is the work of another friend, Ken Yang, who's building green skyscrapers in Asia. Very impressive thinking and very robust kind of thinking, but it is kind of the best of the bad in a way that that it's kind of doing green buildings with the same kind of urban thinking that we've had. So it's not to criticize his work, it's just to say I didn't find my place there. Because most amazing people in the world, and everyone has, I think, an equivalent creative talent to express in their life, are going to, or a lot of people, perhaps even half of people living in urban slums are going to be in these kinds of slums in about 10, 15 years. So that's more than 1.5 billion people that are going to live in places that have no traditional forms of material decency and infrastructure. So I think that the way that we're moving is not just a question of climate change, it's the question of human decency. So I went on a personal crusade in order to do participatory placemaking and started Clear Village, as Ethan mentioned. But then I realized that there was a gap, and actually somebody mentioned it earlier. We haven't taught architects, urbanists, and planners, and also the amateurs that want to become the participatory placemakers. And I'm not saying amateurs in a negative way here. I'm saying that they don't have to be accredited to do something. So I decided that I was going to survey and catalog some of the amazing things that were happening around the world in the placemaking movement. So this is this book called Recoded City, and it's really kind of global in the way that it looks at it. It thanks our friends Jane Jacobs and Jan Gale. I should have added Fred Kent in here. Sorry, Fred, I didn't put you in here. There was only 2 pictures on that page, but you should have been in there. And so there's really sort of this idea that in the book that we are embracing a wiki culture on a planetary level, a new level of planetary conscience in which the web or the internet has been the first step to create those connections, but we're going to tap into the global brain through this wiki culture as we're moving very fast forward. Whether we agree with the proponents of the singularity, how many people here know about the singularity? There's a raise of hands. Okay, well, it's relatively few. So basically the premise is that the biosphere and the technosphere are going to merge pretty soon, and it's going to radically transform the kind of human beings we are. And this guy, Ray Kurzweil, is the proponent of this theory, and he has a university he started with Peter Diamandis in the Bay Area in the US, where you can learn about exponential technologies. And basically what's important about this is just the idea of exponentiality. So I don't want to agree or disagree with the singularity in itself, but I think that the word exponential is very important, particularly because we have to reframe the way we think placemaking. And so I came up with a theory that I've applied, I would say, in my work, which I call recoding. And how many people here are familiar with CRISPR? Okay, a few people again. So CRISPR, so it's a genetic technology that allows you to edit the genes. Basically it's extraordinary and terrifying at the same time. And so not to mention CRISPR in detail, but just to say that I think that what placemaking as an act is to kind of transform the code of a place or understand the DNA of the place in a participatory fashion and then deliver a new way for the gene to express itself in an optimum way. And so that's a piece of work which I think that it makes the architect and the urbanist and everyone in the chain of events only a player in trying to do that act. And I suggest that this is something that we can do in a repeated fashion, like a geology of acts of placemaking. So if in old European and old Asian cities and old African cities, but they're hard to find because there are not many stones. But any old city, you see this geology of placemaking, and I think that's one of the things we have to remember, is to multiply, sorry. Forgive me. So basically, as we multiply these acts, and I think they're generous and they come from the heart of communities to work together, we achieve something that's very special. And at UN Habitat, where I'll also be working for the World Economic Forum, shaping the future of urban services initiative. I think that we need to make that really clear, is that we can't just expect to make it right the first time, but we have to have the kind of impetus to create the momentum for community to self-organize using kind of this open source process to continually change the places in which they work so that they build place capital. And so in the book, you'll find a bunch of examples, 43 documented cases in the world, from disaster relief to new urban datamatics, to sustainable agriculture in difficult neighborhoods around Paris, to new forms of construction using digital fabrication. So I'm going to end my journey here by saying that after doing this participatory placemaking and doing the book, I realized that what's missing very often in communities is a place to anchor the energy of a participatory act. What I mean by that is that once you've created a place, sometimes it gets used by people and it continues its momentum. But if you don't, then at that point, it sort of doesn't deliver the same service for a community. So I think that we need to create a new genus or typology of space where it's a combination of public and private, but it is not a public institution. It's somewhere between a town hall, a showroom, or a gallery, a co-working space, something in between those things that make people work together and actually come together in ways that they haven't in the past. So I decided to create that in London. It's called the Lime Wharf, if some of you have been in London. It started out as a derelict building, which I then redesigned with a bit of fun and creativity and friends, and did a bunch of pop-up activities from cooking to music to you name it. And then I made this flat in which I hosted futurist salons, and then I did exhibitions around the future of making and manufacturing. Then I created a fab lab or a makerspace within the Lime Wharf in order for the community to self-accelerate or obtain the ability to learn about the technologies that they would really be able to use to do things themselves. So you're probably familiar with the circular economy. So I think that the way that we're going to build that into a city is really that people have the technology to understand it by themselves. So this is a new place where you have this vibrancy, new technologies, and what happened with, you could say, the long tail with Amazon and books that are out there, I think is also happening to the city. We're going to self-iterate small areas of cities and have less and less central planning. So in order to reinforce that element, outside of the building, I also created a network of places that were similar, and this is now called the Maker Mile in London, which is the first open source hardware circular economy district in Europe. And so we're getting support from the EU probably next year, and this is just to say that from the idea of a public realm improvement and participatory placemaking, I then moved into creating a place that could host that energy And from that energy, we can build out. And I think that's something where you mix you try to level the inequities in an area, and you try to develop a lot more value around the place. So this is really place capital maximization. And in the next 2 or 3 years, we're going to be developing the next iteration of the building. So this is a design that I've done with friends at Carmody Gork. And it basically is this, you could call it a small architectural icon. I don't like iconic architecture, but what I mean by that is a place that people can identify as being a new kind of community center, where they can fast forward their community and actually create a new type of institution for citizens to get together. So this is the Limorph 2.0, and I hope that maybe we meet in London, and I hope that these ideas will come into the frameworks of UN Habitat 3 so that we can actually think about the new typologies of places that expand the role of civic activity. Thank you very much.
So, wow, so how much time do we have left? Okay, so I actually would love to go to the audience and get questions and for this. How can ask them about how we can help implement this going forward. What does the placemaking movement need to help them do their jobs, and how can they help us advance this movement as well? Yes, back there. Yes, Amir. Amir, just to point him out, he did an internship in our office last year, went back to India and Ahmedabad and started something called Placemakers India, and has implemented some later, quicker, cheaper projects on the streets of Ahmedabad.
Yeah, I would like to I have a question and a suggestion to the World Bank and United Nations, the guys in the, I won't get an opportunity to speak to them. Like, most of the things these guys do is with the topmost people in the government. And so what my suggestion is, if I know UN Habitat is giving money to the youth leadership to do some projects during the World Urban Campaign. So whatever the World Bank is doing to invest money in the developing countries, I, as a citizen of a developing country, I cannot see the progress, because most of the money that goes ends up in corruption. Ends up in being in corruption. So I would like to suggest that if more money is given to the leadership councils, the leadership opportunities in those developing countries, we would actually see more results, and that would actually help making those developing countries being in more most position. Yeah, that's it.
Does anyone want to address that? Do you need clarifying, or yeah, Jose?
If I understand well the question, it's like the mechanism, for example, for us, to canalize the funding, to certain institutions, and the ability, to get us that funding. Well, in the cases of the Global Public Space Program, it's well, there is in UN Habitat, there is a big organization, so it's there is many, for example, the youth funding is a different one than the one that we do on public space. So there is a certain mechanism to apply for our funds. In our case, for example, we have an application process that we have set up a committee that is independent to us, that approve generally the projects that come to us. And usually, what we do is to publicize a little bit the calls, using our networks. Maybe our networks can be limited, maybe there is some people of the community or NGOs that they don't know about where we put the information. We try to be the more transparent possible, and we have a certain criteria. For example, for us, it's very important the engagement or the contribution that the NGOs or the community can also give. Some of the projects, there is for example, the community can offer the voluntary labor force, or they can contribute, certain companies can put some materials, or for example, it's also always we wanted to have a certain engagement also from the local government. Because For us, it's important that we have the funds that implement the project, but also it can be a way to get the knowledge of the local officials of the importance of public space. No? So usually what we do is to incorporate a training to the local officials, to the community about the importance of public space. And then it's like in addition, it's like we ask to the local government to compromise to develop one additional one, or at least to try to improve or to maintain the public space. This is one of the commitment that we have usually with the communities. It's like when we do the implementation of the process, the community then take over and do the maintenance of the public space. That is one of the key issues when we are dealing with public space upgrading.
Okay, I don't want to bore everybody. Just two quick points. One is in terms of corruption, in terms of projects that are funded by the World Bank. I think we have a whole set of process places, try really to minimize any possibilities of corruption. I don't want to go through the details because it's going to bore everybody, it's going to be very long. But I think we just want to say beyond that, I think beyond our projects, and one of the key things we do want to do, especially in the urban development area, is really try to increase the accountability of national, state, local government to the people. And this is where I want to make the linkage to placemaking. This is where the people's participation is important. I think a lot of the issue is you still have, a lot of places still have a top-down mentality that the money is the government's money, it's the planners who knows how to do it, it's the technocrats. I think that's where we work a lot to try to work with the government counterparts, with everybody, try to increase the transparency, accountability, citizen participation, community participation. I think that's important. I think there's still a long way to go. So would love to have your participation in our involvement.
So, and Michael wants to say something.
I just want to add very briefly, picking up on that point, because I think I alluded to this idea of a polycentric model of implementation. There's going to be the more formal top-down mechanisms, but there must be this groundswell of people who are in a movement globally who are taking forward the implementation. Mary Rowe, my good friend, remembers when we were in New Orleans, and the fact that the fear of corruption was paralyzing the resources. And I think it would have been better had we just simply moved forward and figured out a way to get it done rather than be too preoccupied with the formal mechanisms.
Right. So, yeah.
We've got another one here.
Okay, which one? Right there, great, thank you. Last question, sorry everyone. Yeah.
In the Recoded City, you talk about the wiki culture. I founded Toronto Wiki, I also founded Wiki Saga, and using some of these ideas before your work came out. In open source software, open source movements, there's this concept of forking, like taking a recipe for apple pie, changing the apples to pear, and then making apple pies out of pears, for example. Can we fork the city?
Great question. Yes, we can. I'll just speak to that because I'm also very interested in this topic, and our friend Ward Cunningham, who is the inventor of Wiki, has been thinking a lot about how to federate these technologies, and I know you're going to speak to that also.
I think it's a very long conversation to have quickly, but I would definitely think that forking the city is to me a little bit like, you could simplify it in just saying the word hacking, because I think a lot of people won't be familiarized with the concept of forking yet, whereas they'll be familiarized with the word hacking. So there's a group called the Hackable Cities Lab in Holland, which you may be familiar with. I've worked a bit with them, and I think that it's another approach. I prefer personally the image of genomics applied to the city, simply because we're entering such a incredible new genomic age, for good and for worse perhaps, but there is a lot of vocabulary there that I think helps understand how cities work, because lots of codes and the way that you use data, the way you replace the data, the way you construe the data, I think that those are analogies that I prefer to use, because in the end, what's it for? Application. So the word recoding for me was just around that. It's another way of saying hacking or forking. But thank you for your question.
So we're going to wrap it up. I'm going to turn it back over to Fred, who's going to speak. But so we can all come off the stage. Thank you so much.
So what a few days. I'm sort of breathless. Someone's forking down here. Wow. I want to just say one thing. When we were talking with the people in Detroit at Dan Gilbert's office, they're moving so fast that they use VFR as a way of seeing how they're doing, as a way of metrics. VFR is visual flight rules. So they're seeing something, they like it, they go on to the next thing, and they go on to the next thing. But all of us also go by VFR. If we see something that works, we move into that space. We become part of it. So sure, we need good metrics, and we should keep doing that because there are the people that will help us. But the other side of it is those metrics, those VFR things actually breed other things. So they're kind of an organic kind of iteration can grow out of those things, and they begin to change. And as we become more and more organic about owning our communities, shaping them and participating in them and living in them in a way where we live together in a dynamic environment, we will have enormous impact. We've been so structured, so controlled, so repressed because everything has to be done by someone else rather than ourselves. So you can see this happening all over the world. You know, almost every city you go into, there's something that's happening. Paper Island in Copenhagen. There's a wonderful thing in Tallinn that we couldn't believe it was so great. And so we see this. So we know that this is percolating. And that percolation is really organic. And that's, I think, a tremendous part of our future. The other thing that's happening to us is we have a funder who is a very wise man. And he has asked his COO to help us for the future, and he's asked us to think about how we can grow 500x, 25x, and 5x. And boy, did that scare us. You know, that was really, really scary. But then when you start thinking about it, it's possible. And so I sort of imparting this with you. You should go back to your communities and think about how you can grow 5x, 25x, and 500x. And in a sense, this is a 500x situation. So how do you create some high value X out of it? And a 5X for us, we thought, oh my gosh, we can't grow. We don't want to grow that much. But 5X is really finding ways to work with all of you as kind of partners. So we've also transitioned so much because this is no longer about us, it's about all of us. And we feel sort of humbled by all the things that you've shown us today and yesterday and that we're learning elsewhere. So it's great to be part of this movement, and if we can all accelerate the growth of this and get to have things happen, and that's why I like the term lighter, quicker, cheaper, and I hope we keep using that, because in some way you can always do something little that's organic, that has something that people see that they can grow around. And sure, some of these infrastructure projects, building projects are important, but in a sense it's that other kind of change that's going on. I mean, people are so alert to these things, and they see it, and then they occupy it just quickly. You know, I think Copenhagen is one of the more boring cities around, but there's the People's Park and Paper Island and a few other places that people just flock to, and we don't create more of those. So it's really been a pleasure. I can't tell you, when we started this, thinking about this idea back in March, we were thinking, well, maybe we'll get 100 people. I was hoping for 150, and then all of you started to become part of this. And so you can see that it's a much bigger idea than we all have started out thinking about. So we're really excited about this. This is really wonderful. But the people who made this happen are in this room. Nate is somewhere around here. Nate. Mark. Where's Mark? Is Mark? Yeah. I don't see Mark. Where are you, Mark? Not here. And Megan, are you here? What? She's here? Megan? No. Anyway, and then the rest of our staff, if you all can kind of stand up or wave your hands. We have an amazing group of people. And then we started this thing with many of you were part of the Placemaking Leadership Council, and there are 1,350 of them, and there are 500 cities and 74 countries. So when the World Bank, and next week I'll be with the Clinton Global Initiative, all of these people can go and do things in your communities. So we're going to go back and forth on this. So in a sense, you're the placemakers that the World Bank is looking for and everyone else is looking for. So this is a big deal, and we're going to make it a really big deal. So thank you, and Mary's going to come up and just tell you about the logistics. But this has been great. I love you all. We all need to hug as we go out.